After her training, Jessica was exhausted as she boarded her flight. The coach seats were cramped and the flight was overbooked. Unexpectedly, a stranger did something that left her speechless. Surveying the cramped space with no legroom and numerous passengers, Jessica sighed, anticipating a long flight. As she located her seat, she felt her body tense further, already expecting discomfort. Abruptly, a man approached Jessica, obstructing her path. Initially bewildered, his words made it clear what was happening, and she realized she needed to take action. Jessica had undergone intensive military training, and it had prepared her for every situation. But when the strange figure strode toward her, she seemed to forget everything she had learned. She started shaking. What did this day and this particular flight have in store for her? Flight can be overwhelming for many, with cramped space and lack of comfort often causing fear. Yet, it remains the most efficient way to travel, and this was precisely what Jessica required. With a full flight, she anticipated limited legroom. However, little did she know, someone was about to make her wish come true. Jessica fights all the odds on a day-to-day basis to protect her country and its citizens. She is a brave military officer, and she has made enormous sacrifices to ensure that everybody is safe from threat and harm. We should all appreciate her efforts a little more. But on this particular day, one man knew just what to do. Due to the price of business and first-class plane tickets that are a luxury only afforded by some, and even though we would all love to be able to travel in comfort, many of us just can't. Bearing this in mind, Jessica had a good idea of just how uncomfortable her flight would be, but she never imagined that she was not going to be as uncomfortable as she had initially imagined. Jessica slung her heavy bag over her shoulder and made her way to the back of the plane. She looked at her ticket, which stated that she was to be seated in 31B, so she still had to walk quite a way before she could sit down. She glanced over to the spacious business class seats longingly, but she knew she could never afford them. While Jessica was trying to find her seat, she had no idea that someone was quietly talking to the air hostess about her. She lugged her belongings down the aisle until the row of 31 seats was finally in sight. She hefted her shoulder bag into the overhead compartment and sat down, waiting for takeoff. But 10 minutes soon became 15, and then 20. The plane's takeoff was running late. Usually, flights are delayed because of bad weather conditions, but today the sky was a clear, crystal blue. Jessica had a strange feeling that something wasn't right about this flight, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake it. Looking for a flight attendant to ask why the flight was delayed, she was startled to see none in sight. Then, she heard a nervous whisper from behind. Just what was going on? Craning her neck, Jessica spotted the cabin crew and noticed that they were also acting strangely. They all rushed to a corner of the plane and huddled, speaking in furtive whispers. What on earth was going on? Then, Jessica realized that they had all been talking about one of the passengers, and he was moving with purpose straight toward her. The flight attendants gawking and giggling made it evident to Jessica that they were talking about her, concealing their amusement behind their hands. While she had grown accustomed to the attention her uniform drew, something felt different that day, leaving her uneasy. Despite her tired muscles, she remained alert, as her military training had honed her ability to sense trouble. Even when off duty, she constantly scanned her surroundings for threats, ready to react at any moment. Suddenly, she noticed him approaching. As the man approached her, Jessica took his appearance in. He was tall, with fine features and sparkling blue eyes, immaculate in a dress suit and tie. She couldn't help but notice that he was rather handsome. The thought briefly entered her mind that he was going to ask for her number. He had a confident gait and sense of purpose. She had been approached by men like him many times, but all of her life experience and training didn't prepare her for what he said next. Jessica's mind raced as the man strode toward her. It seemed like an age before he finally reached her. Then, he opened his mouth to speak, and she thought he would confirm all of her suspicions. She thought she saw his intentions written on his face. But then, he said something completely unexpected.
Also, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these animal stories every day. Now, back to the story.
The tall stranger gestured to Jessica's seat before taking a step closer. Then, he matter-of-factly informed her that her seat was taken. Jessica looked around for assistance before shaking her head, incredulous. Her eyes widened as he insisted, saying, "I'm in your seat. How dare he?" She thought angrily. What was he talking about? Now exasperated, the man rolled his eyes and said, "What does your ticket say?" "What? No, I'm 31B," Jessica argued. She looked at her boarding pass again, and she was right. It was clearly printed 31B. She wasn't about to be bullied by this man. Who did he think he was? Just what game was he playing? She looked at the flight attendants who had gathered around her, but they just nodded their heads. The stranger informed Jessica that her military status barred her from the seat, but then expressed his admiration for her service and requested that she sit elsewhere. Jessica was perplexed, but then he stunned her by offering his seat in business class as a gesture of appreciation for her hard work. Despite her attempts to refuse the offer, the man persisted, and she eventually gave in, overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events. As she settled into the spacious and plush seat, Jessica realized how exhausted she truly was, with her body aching for rest after days of rigorous training. Jessica couldn't wait to get home so she could finally have some much-needed rest, but then the generous stranger had given her the best gift she could ever have asked for. As she stretched her legs out in front of her and reclined, she couldn't stop thinking about the man who had given up his seat for her. The tall stranger had been much broader and larger than she was, and she reasoned that if she was uncomfortable in the small economy seats, he was going to be even more cramped. She felt an overwhelming sense of guilt, so she thought carefully about how she could brighten his day. She wondered about what she could do for the kind stranger, and then she spoke to the flight attendant. Unfortunately, it seemed as if there wasn't much she could do, as she couldn't send him a glass of champagne from business class to economy. She had to come up with an idea, and then she did. Jessica was unsure of how uncomfortable the stranger might be in his new seat, but she felt powerless to do anything about it. However, she decided to write him a note and attach a $20 bill, which she gave to the stewardess to deliver. Upon reading the note, the man was amazed and his eyes widened. The note expressed Jessica's gratitude and admiration for his kindness, stating that if more people treated others in the way he treated her, the world would be a better place. The attached $20 was meant for him to have a drink and a snack, but the man refused any form of repayment. However, the man was quick to send another note back to Jessica. When she read it, she had no choice but to smile. Even though he wouldn't accept her offer, he had another proposition instead. He said that he would be honored if she agreed to meet with him over dinner when their flight landed. Was he asking her on a date? Her stomach started to flutter as she wrote her reply. Jessica accepted the offer from the generous stranger. After all, how could she decline? It was his act of giving up his seat in business class that had made all of her exhaustion melt away as she lay back and got some much-needed rest. The pair met at a restaurant shortly after their flight landed, and Jessica never could have dreamed that that fateful flight would turn into something of a fairy tale romance. Jessica had never thought that her bad day would yield so much goodness. But the mysterious stranger hadn't just caught Jessica's attention. There was another passenger on the flight that day who took notice. She snapped a picture and shared it to Facebook, where it quickly went viral. Another passenger by the name of Jessica Titus had witnessed everything that day, and she just had to share the story on social media. She was incredibly touched by the man's display of compassion and empathy, and so were all who read her post. Within the space of an hour, her Facebook post had been shared over 4,000 times. Kate Nixon shared a similar story, in which a stranger had also shown kindness to her military husband as he was returning to Kansas, prompting her to express her gratitude for the generosity of others. Jessica's experience highlights that although there are kind people in the world, we are often unaware of their actions. When her story was shared on social media, the anonymous man received the recognition he deserved. It is essential to have more people like him in today's world.